Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Fatal 12 on Nintendo Switch.
おじいちゃん、その人誰？まさか選定の参加者？いや、絶対そうだ。どうして今日はこんな？
The voice belongs to the girl I tailed back to Shikatsugu's house the other day. She's probably returning from a shopping trip based on the plastic bag she's holding in one hand. Her eyes are big and round, and her silver hair is somewhat disheveled. She seems like your average innocent kid. Not an instant after I think that, she gives me an icy cold stare.
この人もおじいちゃんの敵なの。
Right then, I feel like something sharp stabs into my brain. The sudden pain is so bad that my hands clasp onto my head on instinct. I never experienced a headache this painful before. It's the stereotypical powerful kid trope. Burning my head. This isn't good. I'm not sure about the cause, but the last thing I need in this situation is to leave myself vulnerable. Just as I think that. Even the thing that's the trope can't stand the trope. I'm not the only one experiencing this pain, it seems. I just sigh as I take in the unfamiliar room. Mainly because I know the situation I'm in all too well.
言っておくが、このお茶には何も入っとりゃせんからの。
いえ、結構です。
お主の身につけている身分証やらを調べるなら、さっきとっくにやっておるよ。安心せ。これはただの親切じゃ。
While taken aback, I accept a cup of tea and have a sip. There's not much taste to it. Well, it's to be expected when the drink is more yellow than green. As for why I'm in Shikatsugu's house, he brought me inside after that headache knocked me for a loop. Both myself and that girl were told to rest until the pain subsided, but she hasn't woken up yet. I notice her fidgeting in her sleep, which leads to my involuntary gulping down the tea.
これはこれは。
助けてもらったことには感謝してます。ありがとうございました。もう帰ります。
好きにするがいい。言っておくが、わしの構え方は変わらんよ。
はい、わかっています。
He may not see me as his enemy, but there's no denying that we will ultimately have to compete with one another. Not to mention that the girl made no effort to hide her hostility towards me. Sure, I'm curious about the sudden headache that hit us when we met, but it's too dangerous to stay here. I want to be gone before she wakes up. These walls are thin enough that people outside would hear me if I screamed, with no guarantee they'd actually try to help.
あ、おじいちゃん。
具合は大丈夫かの？
大丈夫。心配かけてごめんね。
わしに謝ってどうする？ほれ、お茶でも飲んで落ち着け。
ありがとう。
I hadn't intended on staring, but I couldn't take my eyes off them. It is a quick exchange, but the two of them really seem like an average grandfather and granddaughter. The warmth in his expression reminds me of how my own grandmother looks at me. I planned to leave as quick as possible, but after witnessing that scene, my feet felt stuck to the floor, which gives the girl an opportunity to turn her attention towards me.
お前は
I keep my mouth shut. There's no reason to respond. I'm better off going straight home.
おや、まだいたんじゃな。おい、このお嬢さんは選定の参加者じゃが、わしらの敵というわけではないぞ。お前呼ばわりは良くないし、さっき表で睨んだじゃろ。それは失礼なことじゃよ。帰る前に謝りなさい。
うん、わかった。昼間にこの家に敵が来たんだ。二人もおじいちゃんの家を調べに。だから仲間かと思ってつい警戒しちゃったんだ。ごめんなさい、お姉さん。
This isn't half-hearted. She's even bowing her head. You see scenarios like this often. The granddaughter does something and then apologizes when the grandfather tells her to. I would honestly believe that these two are family had I not known their participants, even though they look so different. They're not just playing the parts. Everything about their interaction feels authentic. That just makes things harder for me.
大丈夫。別に怒ってはないし。
仕方
I can't blame her though, considering my attitude towards him. Of course, it's not like I've decided to let my guard down around them now. My standing by the front door to ensure my escape route serves as proof. However, something she said piqued my interest. I have to confirm with her before leaving.
敵が来たって言ってたよね。それって背の高い男女の二人組だった。
どうしてそれを？
私もその人たちを警戒しているから。
Her eyes widen. Shigetsuku, on the other hand, listens without reacting.
あなたは知ってるの？あの人たちのこと。
うん。だって今朝来たのはその人たちだよ。
なんじゃと？
そっか。おじいちゃんにはまだ言ってなかったね。部屋が荒れてるのはそのせいなんだ。
I did notice some disorganization, but I assume that's how they lived. I don't mean there's trash lying around, but there are a number of newspaper, magazines, and articles of clothing dotting the floor.
3番と11番の人。おじいちゃんもわかるでしょ？
顔は覚えておるが、詳しく聞かせておくれ。
I've completely lost my chance to leave now.
お主も聞いていけばよい。ただし、情報交換じゃよ。
He motions for me to sit closer, probably because he knows I've lost my chance to go too.
おじいちゃんのことを探しに来たあの二人がこの家に入ってきたんだ。おじいちゃんが出かけた直後。
Just a second. It's like 35 degrees out there. It's 33 in the shade. And I'm not in the shade. I was aware that they'd been scouting out the house from when I last came here. They probably have been for several days. Knowing Shikatsugu leaves in the morning, they figured he'd stick to the routine today as well.
だから僕が追い返したよ。女の人の方は強かったけど、男の人はそうでもなかった。
追い返した？だってあの二人だよね。
She's about my height, but she's definitely way younger and extremely slender. Judging from how she said numeral 11 was tough, I doubt she gave them a simple verbal threat. These are the same two who took Sonia's parents hostage, as if they'd listened to a kid's threat.
うん。逃げられちゃったけど、3番の男には深手を負わせたよ。あれなら数日間はこの家に来られないと思う。
また暴力を使ったのか？
仕方がなかったんだ。この家を守るためにはそうするしかなかった。それに先に手を出してきたのは向こうだよ。
ちょっと待って。君が戦ったの？どうやって？
わからない。体が勝手に動いたっていうか、戦い方を知ってたっていうか。
I can do it because it's kid tropes.
そんなことってありえるんですか？
And now I'm suspicious of them again. It's not impossible for her to make this up in an attempt to real information out of me.
この子は記憶喪失なんじゃよ。
おじいちゃん？
構わんじゃろ。それにこれを聞いたところでお主は不利にはならんじゃろうて。
僕はいいけど、おじいちゃんが。まあ大丈夫かな。
選定が始まった時、この子は行くあてもなくさまよっていたんじゃ。わしと出会ってそれでうちで暮らすようになったんじゃよ。
僕は自分の名前も今まで何をやってきたかも、どうして選定の参加者になったのかも覚えてないよ。だから僕は自身のカードの内容も覚えていない。死因や未練を探そうとしても無駄だよ。僕はどうしてこの国にいるのかも忘れてしまったんだ。いや、この国が自分の国じゃないというのも結局おじいちゃんに会ってから分かったんだけどね。
Amnesia. Something we have in common. The only difference is that she lost all of her memories. I've forgotten bits and pieces prior to and after Divine Selection began, but not enough to affect my life. She, meanwhile, doesn't even know where she is. I can't even begin to imagine.
でもね、すぐおじいちゃんと会えたから僕は苦労はしてないよ。
She follows up with a pleasant smile. I find it hard to believe that someone with a smile like this could fend those two off. I've heard about how one retains their personal habits and skills when suffering from amnesia. The loss of personal memory doesn't influence muscle memory or something. But that means she had the ability to go toe-to-toe with those two even before the amnesia.
さて、まだ聞きたいこともあるじゃろうが、お主の番じゃよ。
He turns his attention to me after cutting the conversation short. I guess he did mention some sort of reciprocity of information before. I decided to tell him what I know about those two.
当然、手段を選ばない者もいるじゃろうな。奴らの場合、非道な手段を選んだとも言えるが。
I tell them about what they did to Sonia and her parents, holding a child's parents hostage in order to make them reveal their information. Sheer brute force. However, I make sure not to mention that I have Federico's name card. They never mentioned what cards they have, so fair is fair.
となると、この子が反撃したのも仕方ないことじゃな。
もう分かった？僕だってちゃんと考えがあったんだからね。
分かっておる分かっておる。ほれ、撫でてあげよう。
えへへ。
じゃが、お前が怪我をするかもしれなかったんじゃ。気をつけるんじゃぞ。
分かってるよ。でも心配しないで。僕負ける気がしないから。
Her attitude turns out to be far more childlike than her appearance. From my perspective, she's like a kid who gets carried away after being given a little praise. Still, what she said holds weight if she really was able to fight those two off. Her unpredictability is definitely a concern. Sonia at least accepted the fact that she was a participant. These two, on the other hand, care only about living out their lives like normal people.
これで分かったであろう。わしらは争う気はない。やからもう関わらんことじゃ。
His choice of words makes me think he's somehow read my mind. I'm not sure if that's intentional, but I'm stunned either way. Then I realize it. They're not normal at all. Even real families would struggle to act as legit as these two do. Plus, they're both participants. This is insane.
でもきっとあの人たちは諦めません。怪我が治ったら、治らなくたって必ずまた来ると思います。あなたや私を脱落させないとあの人たちは生きられないから。
わしらを心配しているのかな。あの主はわしらの情報を集めに来たのじゃろ。心配してどうする。
わかりません。でもただ思っただけで。
That's right. I'm far from normal myself.
答えを知りたいと豪語していた割には随分と曖昧な答えじゃの。
嫌な人なんですね、牛塚さんって。
Not that he's wrong. That's why he's been so calm this entire time. He's never seen me as a threat.
おじいちゃんをバカにするの。
いや、そうじゃなくて。
気にするでない。ところで、さっきは何を買っておったのじゃ。
これさっきあいつらが来た時に洗うやつが壊れちゃって。よくわからないんだけど、お店の人が勧めてくれたんだ。
洗うやつ。ああ、洗濯機のホース。
お家の人に聞けばわかるって言ってたけど、おじいちゃんわからない？
Next to her is a washing machine hose. I recognize the logo on the bag. She must have bought it at one of the nearby supermarkets.
わからんの。どうにも機械は苦手での。
洗うやつが壊れたらどうするつもりだったの？
ここならコインランドリーは遠くないからの。
コインランドリー？
お金を払って洗濯機を使える場所じゃよ。
もうおじいちゃんたらパチンコをやるために節約するって言ってたでしょ。
I really want to say something, but I don't. She might actually believe what he says about it being a battlefield. Shiketsugu, meanwhile, takes the hose before returning his gaze towards me.
もう お主ならできるじゃろ。
まあそうなるよね。
In the back of my mind, I knew he'd end up being asked based on their exchange.
わかりました。ホースを取り替えるくらいなら私でもできます。ただそれだけやったら帰りますからね。
ありがとうお姉ちゃん。
この洗濯機全然掃除してない。もうちょっとビニール手袋取ってきて。なんでこんなに本格的にやってるんだろう。排水口も、ちょっと水出してもらえる？
うん、わかったよ。
あ、違う、そっちじゃなくてお風呂場とかから持ってきて。
And thus I faced my fate of getting a torrent of washing machine water to the face. Not only do I get drenched, but the water inside the machine is absolutely filthy. I wish I could exchange this memory for one that I'm missing. Honestly, this is probably the worst thing I've gone through since Divine Selection started. I've only got myself to blame, though. It never would have happened if I wasn't such a pushover. Naturally, I'm not too keen on using the bath at Shiketsuga's place, so I head to a nearby public bathhouse.
わーい、おっきなお風呂に入れる。
まさかナオミが正解だったとはね。
何のこと？
いや、なんでもない。
This whole time, she was actually a he. I should have known based on his stride and his outfit, but his outward appearance really and truly made him look like a girl. I guess I got Miharu to blame for warping my perspective. She carries herself more like a boy, so part of me sees it as normal, despite understanding that she's a rare exception to the norm. I can only sigh at my own silliness.
若いのにため息をつくでないぞ。
あんたたちのせいだから。
怖い怖い。
They both tagged along with me to the bathhouse. I guess I should be thankful that he's a boy. Now we won't end up being alone in here. Making conversation with him would be a challenge by itself, but I can't hide my fear. Plus, something's odd about how we both suddenly got headaches when we came face to face. It has to be related to our memories, somehow.
ほれ、お前も行くぞ。
He scurries along behind Shiketsugu. Now that I think about it, Shiketsugu hasn't referred to him by name. Maybe to ensure that I don't get my hands on his name card, but it's possible that he simply doesn't know it. I'm not quite sure how I reached that conclusion, but it might explain why I find their relationship so abnormal.
名前も知らないのに家族か。
Yeah, I'll get some weird looks if I mutter stuff like that to myself here. Less thinking, more washing. A sigh pours out of me as I soak in the warm water. This time it's a relaxed one, though. I usually just shower at home, so it's been a while since I've gotten to enjoy a bath like this. It's been even longer since I was last at a bathhouse. I was still in elementary school, so I came with my gran.
おばあちゃん。
I whispered quietly so the sound of the lake faucet would drown it out. I still message and talk to her over the phone, but I haven't seen her at all since March. She's my one and only family. I can't blame her since she has other relatives, but it's hard not to feel lonely sometimes. Then again, I should be thankful that she's away right now. Otherwise, she'd run the risk of being taken hostage by people like numeral 11.
寝てもいたね。でもあの子は自由だし、言葉が通じないからな。
The next time I'll be able to see her is over summer vacation. I'll be sure to pay her a visit. Summer vacation. Assuming I don't get eliminated, Divine Selection is scheduled to end around then. So I won't ever get to see her again if I'm eliminated. However, being the sole survivor means I won't be able to see Miharu ever again. Sonia's words come to mind. It's possible to alter fate, so it lets us both make it through together. There are still too many unknowns within Divine Selection, but I feel like I know which answer I should be pursuing. Thinking about Sonia causes my eyes to tear up, but I suck it up and keep them from falling. I need to focus on what I can do right now.
流されちゃったなら流されたなりに、この状況をうまく使うしか。 ない。
That's the conclusion I've come to. My initial plan was to get my hands on Shigetsu and that boy's information, but I can leave that alone for now. I'm pretty sure they don't think poorly of me. In that case, it's possible for me to form an alliance with them. Doing so would put me on level ground against the likes of Alan and Numeral 11. However, I'm not convinced that I have it in me to eliminate those two when the time comes. I feel like I'm struggling with it even now. I like Mikado's determination. Even if Sonia had asked me to eliminate her, I highly doubt I would have been able to.
もっと楽しいことを考えよ
Like the fireworks display we all promised to go see, for example, which happens to take place after Divine Selection ends. It's impossible to influence my thoughts away from Divine Selection, so I resort to counting the droplets of water as they fall from my hair.
う。どうして待ってるんですか？
Both Shigetsu and the boy are perched on a sofa by the entrance. The boy has fallen asleep with his back against it, though.
この子が待っているうちに眠ってしまったがの。この体ででっかい偉人さんたちと戦ったんじゃ。疲労もたまるじゃろ。
別に待たなくてよかったのに。
そう言うでない。この子は年の近いお主と話せて嬉しかったんじゃよ。おそらくかつていた場所では友達がいなかったんじゃろ。今も近所からは避けられてるしの。
年近いかな。
He's not much smaller than me, but his attitude and facial expression makes him seem years younger. I give the boy another look up and down.
信じられないです。こんな小さいのにあの人たちに負けないどころか退散させたんだなんて。
信じられないが、前にも似たようなことがあっての。
I wait for him to follow up, but he offers a smile instead.
その前に喉が渇いたの。コーヒー牛乳を買ってきてくれんか。わしが動いてこの子を起こしちゃ悪いしの。
いいですけど。
I return after grabbing something for the both of us.
あった、入浴料しか持ってきとらんかった。すまんが後で返すから許してくれんか。
わざとですよね。
そんなことはないわい。
Unimpressed as I am over an old man mooching off someone my age, I'm better off forcing him to keep talking.
この子と会って間もない頃の話じゃ。深夜、この子が目を覚ましてしまっての。散歩に連れ出してわしがこの子と歩いている時じゃった。急に催してしまったんじゃが、たまたま近くに公園があっての。わし一人で便所へ行ったんじゃ。この子は好奇心旺盛での。ネズミか何かを追って公園から離れていたらしいんじゃ。わし一人でキョロキョロしていると、柄の悪い若者が3人近づいてきての。親父狩りというやつじゃの。こんなじじいが金を持っているように見えんじゃろうが、自分より弱そうな相手なら誰でもよかったんじゃろ。わしは一発殴られたんじゃ。それで金を出せと言われた。連中の中にはバットを持ってるやつもおったの。
ひどい。
じゃがそこにこの子が帰ってきた。この子は状況を見るなり一言こう聞いたんじゃ。その人たちはおじいちゃんの敵とな。わしはその時肯定の返事をしてしまったことをほんの少しだけ後悔しておる。この子は直後、若者3人を病院送りにしたんじゃ。
I am mesmerized as he describes the event in detail. He dodged a bat swing and ripped it from the assailant's hands in one motion, following up with a solid blow to the face. Then he struck the legs of the second one with said bat before smashing them in the face as well. The one who punched Shigetsu tried to run, but the boy spun around to build momentum before flinging the bat straight at his head. He finished by knocking the final attacker off his feet, jumping on top of him and strangling him until unconsciousness.
わしが止める暇もなかった。
There's no doubt Shigetsugu would have experienced far worse had the boy not shown up. They would have beaten him regardless of whether or not he gave them money.
驚くわしに近づいて、この子は平然と帰ろうと言ったんじゃ。じゃが、わしは怖いとは思わんかった。頼もしいと思ったよ。この子は暴力で屈することがないと安心した。
そんな戦い方を体が勝手に動いたとでも。
じゃろうな。この子は自分の体が小さいことを、力が弱いことを分かっておるんじゃろうな。きっと忘れている記憶は壮絶な人生のはずじゃ。訓練と実践の経験がなければ子供があんな動きをできまいて。
Child soldiers in countries rife with combat come to mind. I'm only aware of what I've seen in the news, but there have been plenty of pictures featuring kids holding weapons and engaging in warfare. Assuming Shigetsugu is right, then he might be from such a place. It would explain his cause of death, too. Being exposed to fire seems like it'd be common.
じゃがな、この子はいい子じゃ。純粋で優しい。戦うのだってわしのためじゃ。
3や11の人たちとは違うってことですか？
その人らをわしは知らん。誰かと比べてでなくての、この子のことを言っとるんじゃよ。
I can't say I know much about him, and yet for some reason I can see where Shigetsugu is coming from.
さて、あまり長居するのもいかんし、そろそろ行こうか。起こすのもかわいそうじゃし、この子をおんぶしてやってくれんかの。
He's doing this on purpose. I know he is. And just like that, I end up carrying the boy home. We're both a similar size, so I need to stop and catch my breath now and again. One thing I've noticed is that he's more built than you'd expect.
すまんの。わしはどうも腰痛があっての。
もう喋らないでください。
怖い怖い。
Shiketsugu isn't the most pleasant person to deal with, I've gathered. That aside, this kid must be as young as I think based on how deeply asleep he is.
母さん、なぜ死んでしまったの？
I hear him mumbling in his sleep. His speech differs a fair bit from how he speaks with Shigetsugu too. I stop dead in my tracks. This might be what I've been looking for.
どうしたんじゃ？
私だって疲れます。
I move his attention away from me with that answer. It doesn't seem like he's noticed what just happened. I repeat the boy's words in my head as we're walking along. It has to be his regret. I'm going to assume that his amnesia doesn't restrict the content of his dreams. In the same vein, it's no stretch to say that he lost his mother at a young age due to where he was raised, which means his regret shouldn't be too hard to guess. I do my best not to think about it any further, though I'd best save it for when I get home. Shigetsugu might realize that I've obtained numeral 4's regret card if my book starts to glow here. Ideally, I'd want to avoid making them wary of me. I can feel the sweat running down my brow. Not from my nerves, it's just because I'm exerting myself right after a hot bath. I'll have to take a shower once I get home and done with this.
2階が寝室じゃ。すまんが、この子を布団に横にならせてもらえるかの。わしはお茶を入れとるよ。
わかりました。
I sigh again from being forced to carry a boy upstairs despite carrying him the whole way home. Today's been nothing but sighs.
ここか。
The bedroom door is half open already, so it's easy to find my destination. I approach the futon and lean down to let him off. He grabs onto my arm.
母さん、
He must be confusing me with Mom appearing in his dream. His tiredness gets the best of him, though, and he lets my arm go right after. The strength of his grip was shocking.
男子なんだよね。この子も。
Even though he still looked like a girl to me. Honestly, I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking it. Just look at that face. On the flip side, I'd probably be feeling pretty nervous right now if he looked both his age and his gender. He must be around 2 or so years younger than me, so even if that were the case, it'd probably be fine. I notice a half-open drawer out of the corner of my eye. After I ensure that Shigetsugu isn't coming upstairs, I make my way over to it. Sure, it's a half-open drawer, but it's dark in here and I can't see inside, so I open it nice and slow. I was worried that the noise accompanying it would wake up the boy, but it didn't. I can still barely see inside even after opening it up, so I light it up with my phone. The shelf is full of old photos, easily over 100. Upon closer inspection, some are relatively new. The contents are mostly the same, family pictures. Featuring in them are an old couple, their grandson and his parents. The grandfather has to be Shigetsugu.
思った通り抜け目ないの。
My shoulders stiffen in response to the quiet voice from behind me.
お茶が入ったんじゃが、遅いんで呼びに来たんじゃ。まあ、下へ来なさい。
All I can do is nod without turning around. Much like this afternoon, he's made tea for me. But unlike then, I take my time drinking it. Too bad that doesn't help make it taste any better.
すみません、勝手に写真を見てしまって。
構わんよ。引き出しを開けっぱなしにしておいたのはわしじゃしの。それに、わしを脱落させたかったらそうすればいいんじゃ。この老いぼれが長生きできればそれに越したことはないかもしれんが、別段これからの人生に執着もしとらんからの。
With just that, I understand the meaning behind those photos.
あれはあなたの未練なんですね。
The family that he held so dear. There were a few pictures of them abroad as well. He's living alone now, but it's likely that the rest of his family stayed here at some point.
わしも年じゃ。未来に希望なんぞ持たんよ。じゃからか、あの写真を見ると時々思うてしまうんじゃ。あの頃に戻りたいのとな。
A regret rooted neither in the present nor the future, but the past. Parsha said that one's regret represents the future, but that's not always the case. Regret is born from something you can't bring yourself to give up on. In that sense, it's logical that wanting to go back to better times can become one's regret.
無理ですよ。
わかっておるよ。それにの、今はあの子がいるから寂しくないんじゃ。あの頃を思い出せるしの。
でも必ず終わりは来ます。
お主とでは価値観が違うかもしれんがの。終わりなぞ怖くはないぞ。
His tone makes it clear he has no ulterior motive.
もっとも、あの子のことは気がかりじゃが。選定が終わった後も生き残って幸せになれるか。わしにはようわからんよ。
私に言われてももっとわかりません。
あの子の未練のことなら、お主も想像がついておるだろう。
His question takes me by surprise.
あの子の寝言は、わしも聞いたことがあるからの。あれはきっと、あの子の眠っている記憶。まあ、深層心理みたいなものから出たものだと思っておる。帰路で足を止めたとき、お主は何かに驚いていたからの。
I figured he hadn't noticed at the time, but he simply chose to keep quiet. This old man really is a mystery.
あの子の未練はきっと叶わんことじゃ。わしと同じ。過去に向けられた未練じゃ。
それで選定が終わった後も幸せかどうかを気にしていたんですね。まさか私にあの子をおんぶさせたのって。
さすがにそれは想定外じゃ。わしもそこまでひどいことはせんよ。
He laughs it off, but that doesn't quell my suspicion.
あなたは何が目的なんですか？
Nothing's going to come from letting him control the conversation. I'm not sure if he's doing it on purpose, or if that's just the kind of person he is, but I'm over it.
あの子に ご飯を作ってあげてくれんかの。
わけわからないんですけど。
ならばこうしよう。一度でいい。このお願いを聞いてくれたら、わしの死因をお主に教える。
いや、そうじゃなくって。
せめて少しでもこの子の未練を叶えてあげたいんじゃ。
He pauses briefly before explaining.
わしは料理がからっきしでの。あの子が来てから食べたものといえば、コンビニやスーパーで買ったものばかりじゃ。
牛塚さんが作ってあげればいいんじゃないですか？
わしの息子の嫁にも似たようなことを言われたことを思い出したわい。
やっぱり一緒に住んでいたことがあるんですね。
息子が結婚してから数年間だけじゃがの。わしの妻は早くに死んだから、わしと息子夫婦3人で暮らしていたんじゃ。孫が生まれる前に息子たちは家を出て、ほとんどそれっきりじゃがの。
There's a tinge of sadness in his voice as he recalls the past. His regret may have come about during the time when they were living here. I've never seen him look so emotional. That's all I needed to confirm that his regret is rooted in those days.
おっと、話がそれてしまったの。ともかくじゃ。これに関しては、わしが料理を作っても無理なんじゃよ。
いや、もしかして。
I finally catch on to why he's so particular about this.
あの子の未練はもしかして母親の手料理？
Light spills forth from my bag the moment I ask. It has to be in response to my having figured out numeral 4's regret. A regret he'll never be able to fulfill. Shigetsugu casts his eyes over to my bag for a moment, likely having understood what just happened before continuing.
あの子が母親に料理を作ってもらったことがあるのかないのか、わしにはわからん。じゃがある時、定食屋でテレビを見ていたことがあったんじゃ。他愛のないドラマじゃったかの。ドラマの登場人物に母親がいての、ちょうどあの子と同じくらいの息子もおった。その母親の作った料理を嬉しそうな顔で食べておったんじゃ。よくある日常の場面じゃよ。それを見ていての、あの子は泣いていたんじゃ。自分でも理由はよくわからないと言っていたんじゃが、記憶の奥で思うところがあったんじゃろうな。テレビは時々見ておったが、あの子があんな反応を見せたのはその時だけじゃった。それに気づいた時、わしの本が光ってあの子のカードができたんじゃ。
私に母親の代わりをさせるってことですよね。そんなの無茶ですよ。
そんなことは分かっておる。じゃからお主も得をするよう、わしの死因を教えると言っておるんじゃ。
His tone turns far more coercive, likely in an attempt to pressure me into agreeing. The sudden change is surprising, but I hold my ground and stare him down. It isn't an attempt to hide my surprise or fear. I'm just really angry with him.
きっとあなたの未練はあなたのせいで失ったんですね。
分かっておる。
His painful acknowledgement is followed by him lowering his head. He lowers it so far that his head almost touches the floor.
取引のようなやり方はお主に通じんことはよく分かった。ただのじじいのお願いじゃ。気休めかもしれん。わしの自己満足かもしれん。あの子に手料理を作ってやってくれんか。
I need time to think. What's the correct way to respond to this? It's entirely possible that numeral 4 won't be able to fulfill his regret even if he lives through this. Not to mention that there's no way my cooking will help him to do so. What happens after I do all this? Assuming I get Shigetsugu's cause of death and use it to eliminate him, what would happen after that? Is he even thinking that far ahead?
わしはできることはやっておきたいんじゃ。
The statement alone tells me that he isn't. At the same time, it tells me just how much he cares. It's the same mindset I had towards Sonia, after all.
わかりました。
本当か。
ただしそれっきりです。今日は遅いので明日の夜ご飯を作りますから、それっきり関わらない。牛塚さんからもあの子にそう伝えてください。そして今後私があなたやあの子を脱落させても恨まないでください。
約束しよう。わしはもともとお主ら他の参加者を狙うつもりはなかったんじゃ。じゃがあの子が自分の意思で他の参加者を脱落させようと動き出した時、わしは止めることはできん。
A brief tense silence follows his claim. He isn't bluffing, that much I can tell.
構いません。それは今の状況でも同じですから。
I answer without much hesitation. My best option is to lower the chance that I become their target. Granted, I've already settled on agreeing to this proposition before taking that into consideration. His desire hits too close to home for me to refuse.
昔もこうできれば、わしは孤独にはならんかったかもしれんの。
He mutters under his breath, most likely intended for me not to hear him.
では今度こそもう帰ります。明日の夕方6時過ぎにまた来ます。買い物もしてきちゃいます。
わかった。わしはそろそろあの子を起こすとするかの。
I watch as he pulls himself up onto his feet.
どうかしたかの。
お金、さっきのコーヒー牛乳の分と明日の買い物の分前払いしてください。お釣りはちゃんと返しますから。
ケチじゃの。
当然です。
I agree to cook for him, but he certainly won't be preparing a five-star. I certainly won't be preparing a five-star meal. I'm sure that Shiketsugu will wriggle out of paying me back unless I demand it right now. So there you have it. He eventually gives in and hands me 3,000 yen notes. After that, I can finally leave. I crash down onto my bed as soon as I arrive.
も
Been a while since I last screamed into my pillow.
う美晴に話したらバカかいでは済まないな。
Without thinking, I talked to myself out loud. Not only did I succeed in gathering info about Shiketsugu, but I also met the boy staying with him, and I somehow agreed to cook that boy dinner. I didn't let myself be influenced this time, though. I agreed to do it on my own volition. Dangerous as it may be to get involved with other participants, there's something far more important to figure out. Do I have what it takes to eliminate them after getting this attached? I need to find my answers to that before I obtain all their cards.
シャワー浴びよう。
Luckily for me, I've already gotten used to putting off the questions I can't answer yet. I go to bed each night confident that I will wake up the next day. It's the one constant in my life, even with the advent of divine selection. Well, on days where an election isn't being held anyway. I drag myself from bed and get ready for school like always. My plans for the evening are already set, so I won't be opening the store today. I've kept it closed so often lately that I'm starting to run out of excuses for my gran. Granted, she's never too persistent about me opening it up because we either make hardly anything out of it or we actually lose money. That, plus, she seems to realize that I'm caught up in something else at the moment. Not to imply that she knows about divine selection, of course. Most likely she thinks I'm busy with exams or personal issues. My grades are hardly stellar, so it's not surprising that she's concerned. I noticed Naomi as I walked through the gate. She's with a friend, too. Well, why don't we find out what to do next time? This is audap. You've been watching Fatal 12 on Nintendo Switch. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.